So that's our challenge for this week. Think of someone you know or start asking some questions to find out who was brave enough to keep their name or change their name to reflect who they truly are inside, because that is an everyday hero.
Many of us have daydreamed about being a hero when we were young, and maybe not so young. I know I did. Sometimes I think it prepares us to behave well even when events prevent us from thinking clearly. Here is a poem by Rabindranath Tagore, Nobel laureate of literature in 1913. And he wrote this poem about daydreaming about being a hero, and then he became one. And he's considered perhaps the greatest writer of India, of modern India. And he was also a great reformer and critic of colonialism in India. This is The Hero, and this is translated by Kumud Biswas. Just suppose for once I was traveling with my mother in a foreign land and going to a faraway place. Mother, you were in a palanquin with its doors slightly ajar, and I was cantering along on a chestnut horse, raising clouds of dust. When in the west the sun set and it was evening, it seemed we had reached the vast plain where the twin ponds are. Wherever we looked, it was utterly empty and dark. There was not even a single man or beast. And mother, this seems to have made you afraid. And you thought, to what strange place have we come? I said, Mother, don't fear. See, yonder is the bed of the dead river. That wild country was covered with weeds, and the road had taken a turn in the midst. No cattle were grazing there. As soon as it was evening, they had left the village. Who knows whither we were bound, for nothing was visible in the dark. And then you told me, what is that light I see near those ponds? All of a sudden, lo, who was coming there shouting and raising a hullabaloo? In fear, you were praying in your palanquin. Its bearers had fled to the nearby bush and were trembling in fear in their hiding place. I called out aloud, Mother, why do you fear? I am here. They had heavy clubs in their hands, thick disheveled hair on their heads, and jaba flowers stuck in their ears. I told them, beware. See my sword here. Take one more step forward, I'll cut you all to pieces. In reply, they jumped up and shouted even louder. Mother, you told me, child, don't go there. I said, see what I do. Spurring my horse, I went among those bandits. You'll be amazed to hear, with my sword and shield, what a great fight there was. Some of them took to their heels, and many got killed. You must have feared, after fighting alone with so many brigands, your son had died, sprinkled with blood and wet with sweat. When I came back and told, the fight is over, you came down from your palanquin, you kissed me and took me on your lap and said, luckily, my child was there. Otherwise, what great calamity it would have been. Every day, so many things happen. Not all of them are so very important. But why doesn't it happen as I sometimes imagine? It would have made a capital story, and everybody would listen in amazement. My elder brother would, of course, shrug in disbelief. How is such a thing possible? For he is a weakling. But our neighbors would say, luckily, the mother had her child by her side. Now, please join Meg Dorsey for the pastoral prayer for joys and sorrows.
In this community of caring, we hold the joys and the sorrows of our members close so that we may all feel supported and connected. Today, we do not have any specific joys and sorrows contributed from our members, But if you do have something that you'd like to share with everyone, please feel free to type it into the chat box for others to read. Great mystery of life that grounds and surrounds us. May we be open to the healing that love, generosity, patience, and humility bring to us as we seek deeper connections with our loved ones, our community, and our wider world. May we all do our part to bring kindness to those who suffer and celebrate the moments of joy with an open heart. Today, our hearts go out to those who have lost loved ones in the terrible building collapse in Florida as the rescue mission turns to one of recovery. Our thoughts and well wishes are with those who are fighting fires throughout the state as our fire season begins early this year, and also for those who may be unsheltered or otherwise lack a way to stay cool during this terrible heat wave. And as we learn more about the surprising assassination of the president of Haiti, let us be mindful of the toll that continued gun violence takes in our country and in our world. As machinations continue over voting rights throughout the country, may we hope that outcomes reflect broad access to all eligible voters who wish to participate in our democracy. May we be instruments of peace. May we sow the seeds of love, tolerance, and hope. May we seek to understand, console, and forgive. May we all let our lights shine upon others as we pass through our daily lives, noticing and appreciating heroic acts, both large and small. And now let's take a moment to consider any personal joys and sorrows. And I invite you to imagine placing the colored stone in our shared bowl as we once did at our services. What a lovely ritual that was, and in the very near future we will be able to resume that. And in this continued spirit of meditation and reflection, I invite you to be still and listen to our Spirit of Life from the SFUU choir.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Today, we are considering heroes in our lives who they are, where they come from, and what they mean to us. Many years ago, while I was traveling in Egypt, I found myself stuck in a van for many hours with our Egyptian guide, Soha. She was a former lawyer and journalist, but she was making her living in the tourism industry as that was her best option. To fill in the time in the very hideous Cairo traffic, I began to tell her a favorite story from one of my kids' books from the library. And the story is called The Blue Faience Hippopotamus. And here it is right here. It's a beloved story that we told many times when my kids were little. And it's a story that comes from Egypt. And in this story, a hippo who lives on the banks of the Nile is desperately in love with a beautiful princess. No chance for this little hippo, though, because a handsome prince comes by to win her love. Through a convoluted encounter with a magician, this little guy ends up becoming her beloved toy, a blue faience hippopotamus. And here is this little guy that I actually dragged back from Egypt in one piece, kind of a miracle. The real ancient ceramic artifact resides at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Anyway, the princess loves her beloved toy, the blue faience hippopotamus, but she's still very lonely though, and she longs for a child. In the end, due to his steadfast love for her and his selflessness, the magician turns this little hippo into her child, her babe in arms. What a tearjerker. Let me just show you the last page because it's a killer. Here she is. The blue faience hippopotamus becomes her babe. So when I was done telling the story, my friend Soha was horrified. She exclaimed, "Why do you people in the West tell these crazy stories that aren't even true? Why don't you tell real stories about real people who do great things?" I was kind of shocked, and I thought, wow, that's kind of a good comment. And the comment has stayed with me for many years. And I recalled this when Pam asked me to join her today to talk about real heroes and real stories. I shared many fairy tales and magical stories about fictional characters with my kids over the years, and I thought this was the right thing to do, and I think I still think it's the right thing to do. You know, inspiration, role models, most of them were fictional characters, lovely stories about imaginary things. But what about the real heroes and inspirational people from their actual lives? They got very little of that, although there were many stories to tell about actual heroes, both historical and from their own families, that I perhaps didn't spend enough time sharing with them. Real heroes are not so hard to come by. They are in our families, our workplaces, and in our communities. Some of them are historical giants, such as Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. Many are current heroes that we admire and are inspired by, depending on our values. And many are ordinary folks that we just go through our day with. At the risk of sounding too much like a proud mother, and I'm sure that I will, my son is a hero to me because he simply sees the need that others have, and he contributes what he can without a second thought or without any wish for secondary gain. He has always been a peacemaker, the first one to offer the olive branch. In grade school, he was assigned to look out for and assist the student in his class with Down syndrome, and he cheerfully shepherded the student through many grades. In college, he spent his Saturdays walking women safely into Planned Parenthood clinics, and he worked as a volunteer to assist mentoring and settling immigrant families into the city of Providence, where he lived. In March, he will be an indirect kidney donor. This means that his kidney will go not to a family member or loved one, but into the universe, the algorithm of those in need. This will set off a chain reaction of other kidney donations that will likely lead to scores of life-saving kidney donations. He sees this as a simple math problem. He has too much of something while others have too little. End of story. In this world of hardship and inequality for so many, my heroes are the many loving and generous people who contribute what they can to bring some measure of equity and shared prosperity to those in need. My son will be the first to tell you that less is more, and he will be the last to tell you that he sees himself in any way a hero. In fact, he finds my admiration for him very tiresome. And he's right. So I am learning from him both the impact of generosity and humility, while I remember that once upon a time he needed a diaper change. Many of us are familiar with the beloved poet Mary Oliver. She was devoted to her dog Percy, who I think was both a muse and a hero to her, based on her lovely anthology of poems called Dog Songs. Well, another hero of mine is my dog Scout. Scout is unfailingly loyal, devoted, and loving. I know that we all love our dogs and our pets, but let's think about the way that they truly inspire us on a daily basis. And please enjoy this unknown quote. Perhaps you've heard it before, but I find it delightful. If you can start the day without caffeine or pep pills, if you can be cheerful, ignoring all of your aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, if you can understand when loved ones are too busy to give you time and attention, if you can overlook when people take things out on you, when through no fault of yours, something goes wrong, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can face the world without lies or deceit, if you can conquer tension without medical help, if you can relax without liquor, if you can sleep without the aid of drugs, if you can do all these things, then you are probably a dog. The act of generosity, support, and celebration of others is foundational to everyday heroes. And where would we be without them? From the simple acts of heroism to the many more complex and sacrificial, may we all notice, appreciate, and emulate those acts in our lives. Thank you.
So just to let you know, I'm having some computer difficulties at this exact moment here. And I'm going to ask Meg to start my talk, if you would, Meg. And I'm thinking that that I'll be able to get this back in just a moment. So if you would begin for me, that would be lovely. Thank you.
So Pam, we can hear you, and I so hope that you are able to find your own text, because it would be lovely if your sermon came from you. So please jump in at any time. At any time, please jump in if you have the text in front of you that you need. And so since Pam is having some troubles, I'm just going to go ahead and share Pam's words with you. Recently, we spent a number of Sundays exploring the power of storytelling, and today's subject of real-life heroes is in a way connected. We've looked at some inspirational protagonists in sermons, reflections, and stories for all ages from fiction. As I was working on my reflection, as Pam was working on her reflection for the Lord of the Rings service, I remembered that I had listed Frodo as one of my personal heroes on my old MySpace profile. Does anyone still remember MySpace? For those of you that are unfamiliar with it, it was a popular social media platform before Facebook. On one's profile page, you could pick out a theme song that would play when someone went to your site. Pretty cool. But there was also a place on your homepage where you could list your personal heroes, and I loved that feature. You could tell so much about a person, I thought, from seeing the folks that inspired them. I had some fictional and non-human heroes listed: Frodo, Nancy Drew, Seabiscuit, and a dog named Hugo. But I
Meg?
also, all right, so pick it up from your non-human heroes listed. Frodo, wonderful.
And a dog named Hugo, which I talked about in a service sometime in the past. But I also had real people who existed in the past and present. Lech Walesa, the Polish electrician who led a workers' strike in Poland and started a movement that changed the world. Luis Valdez, a man who's still living, who grew up in migrant labor camps in California's Central Valley and went on to form El Teatro Campesino, a troupe of performers, amazing performers, whose main focus is to provide free and excellent theater to the disenfranchised. His beautiful theatrical art, like my favorite musical, which he wrote, Zoot Suit, which was eventually made into a movie, led to his successful film La Bamba. And then he gave up the money and fame that Hollywood offered and went back to his roots and artistic integrity. And you can sometimes see him. There'll be something that shows up in the newspaper or online that they may be performing in some park in the Central Valley or sometimes here in Sacramento or the Bay Area. And I really recommend that that you see them. They're amazing theater. And there were several more from history. If during this service you feel comfortable with sharing, go ahead and list some of your personal heroes or a personal hero, a real life one from the past or present in the chat feature. That would be interesting. So my train of thought led to the question, do people in general still have heroes? Are heroes useful or beneficial? What are the qualities of a real life hero? Why is the plural of HERO spelled HEROES unless it's a sandwich? Anyone? I know there's someone out there who knows that answer. Why do some perfectly nice people have heroes that I consider villains and vice versa? I'll attempt to speak to these questions, except the grammar one. So many of the statistics and studies I will mention in my talk come from a very, very long scholarly paper by Scott Allen and Jeffrey Green of the University of Richmond and Virginia Commonwealth University, both in Richmond, Virginia. If anyone would like to read it, and I'm telling you it's really long, hit me up and I'll send you a link. Let's start by defining heroism. Here are some dictionary definitions. Impressive and courageous conduct or behavior. And another, the display of qualities such as courage, bravery, fortitude, and unselfishness. And a third, behavior directed toward achieving or having achieved something great. So, extraordinary behavior displayed for achieving an important goal. But what do non-dictionary writing ordinary people consider heroes? In a study in 2011 by psychologists Allison and Gethels, lay people were asked the question, what were the qualities of heroes? There were 8 qualities that came up most often, which were intelligent, strong, reliable, resilient, caring, charismatic, selfless, inspiring. Interestingly, The dictionary definitions, emphasis on courage and bravery, are not on the list, though they were on a secondary list along with moral integrity, proactive, talented, personable, and risk taker. So, in a nutshell, heroes have exceptional attributes and actions that are life changing and highly memorable. So, let's consider what scholars and scientists have to say. Early conceptions of heroism emphasize the qualities of power, apotheosis, and masculinity. In antiquity, heroism was reserved almost exclusively for men who were esteemed for strength, courage, resourcefulness, and the ability to slay enemies. I feel like there is a resurgence of this model in many of the superhero films, especially those based on Viking mythology. But to quote Allison and Green, the human tendency to assign godlike characteristics to heroic leaders can be traced to Beowulf and Achilles, and later it became manifest as the divine rights of kings during the Middle Ages and Renaissance. This kind of thinking uh, perhaps gave rise to the blatantly sexist great man theory of Thomas Carlyle back in 1840, who stated, "The history of the world is but the biography of great men," reflecting his belief that heroes shape history through their personal attributes and divine inspiration. And this view was supported by many, including apparently philosophers such as Hegel, Spengler, Kierkegaard, and was widely accepted. Let's not even talk about Freud. It's crazy. So, did anyone out there feel the lack of heroes that looked like them? We could safely, I think, change Carlyle's famous phrase to the biography of great white men. I was so affected by the utterance of a child sitting behind me in the superhero film, The Black Panther. When the Black Panther was revealed to be an African-American man, this child, in a really loud voice, filled with excitement and wonder and surprise, said, "Mommy, he's Black." I'll never forget it. And the rest of the theater appreciated it as well. And I said a silent thanks to the filmmakers. I know as a girl, I searched for role models and heroes who were smart and brave and strong. Real life examples were few and far between. Betsy Ross just didn't cut it for me, though it was better than nothing. There were some martyrs, but that also was not too appealing. So here is a sonnet by female Irish poet Evan Boland, 1944 through 2020, from her book, A Poet's Dublin, about her encounter with the statue of an Irish hero. It's called Heroic. Sex and history, and skin and bone, and the oppression of Sunday afternoon. Bells called the faithful to devotion. I was still at school and on my own, and walked and sheltered from the rain. The patriot was made of drenched stone. His lips were still speaking. The gun he had held just killed someone. I looked up and looked at him again. He stared past me without recognition. I moved my lips and wondered how the rain would taste if my tongue were made of stone. and wished it was, and whispered so that no one could hear it but him, "Make me a heroine." Uh, so, our standards for heroism different for different countries and cultures. Cross studies of heroism are rare, but one study in 2019 compared American, Greek, and Indian lay participants' ideas about heroes. Although there was some overlap of qualities, there were some significant differences. Indian respondents tended to list celebrities and actors far more than others. Greeks were more likely to list war heroes and heroes from antiquity. Americans were more likely to list athletes, superheroes, and scientists. Obviously, the study was done before the pandemic. Indians valued agency, in other words, the ability to take action toward a goal, piety, and charisma, where Greeks and Americans also valued agency. They also listed altruism and integrity. So, to answer maybe the first question I asked, um, people do still have heroes, though I expect access to instant information and social media may have made some folks more cynical about the 8 qualities of heroes I talked about a few pages ago. I was quite upset about the Bill Clinton scandals when he fell from grace and the heroic pedestal from which he fell for me. I'm not really genial in discussions with Shakespeare deniers. Yes, he was one of the people on my MySpace personal hero page. The next question, are heroes useful or beneficial? There are studies of pro-social risk-taking. An example of that would be people who risked their lives to shelter Jewish or other condemned folks from the Nazis. Right now, there are people who speak truth to power or take action against injustice and evil in the world at great personal risk. And some are right here in this congregation. We have seen some unlikely heroes emerge in the last year or two. This risk-taking, heroic attribute is especially desirable and emotionally moving. Allison and Gethels argued in 2016 that heroes who help in emergency situations provide people with scripts for performing similar heroic acts in their own lives. There's also a tendency of heroism to invoke the best versions of ourselves, to recover from personal wounds, and to develop and pursue personal goals. A number of investigations have found that the act of witnessing someone helping another person increases people's willingness to help others. In a study in 2018 showed that exposure to heroic actions promotes post-traumatic growth. To quote Allison and Green, individuals inspired by heroes tend to adopt healthy new beliefs and values, to view themselves and the world in a more positive manner, acquire wisdom, and experience a greater appreciation of life. In effect, witnessing acts of heroism helps to transform survivors of trauma in their own life journeys. Scholars have found also that reading, listening, and watching tales of heroism have been shown to have important psychological effects. According to Joseph Campbell, in classic hero mythology, the hero is separated from the safe, familiar world and thrown into a dangerous and unfamiliar territory. The hero finds that they are unprepared for the journey and humbled to find that they are missing important inner qualities. I was witness to during the pandemic to students who were thrown from normal college experience into a kind of nightmare world of caring for sick and sometimes dying parents, the grueling and frustrating situation of caring for and helping to teach children while holding down jobs, all while trying to keep up with their academic goals. Amazing unsung heroes. Heroic underdogs are also very inspiring. People tend to root for and identify with underdogs that have unexpected success. It's almost comical to see politicians vying with each other for the underdog vote. Publicists strain to find a spin on a candidate's wealth and privilege to make their obstacles to victory seem large. The last lap as I circle around the subject of real life heroes is my struggle to understand how half of America, including some of my relatives and neighbors, could hold such a polar opposite view of heroes than I. I think it is too easy to villainize millions of people as evil or unintelligent, who may also think that I am immoral and soft in the head. I have friends that used to sing Kumbaya, liberal friends, that hold the view that there's no hope for understanding and that the leftish folks need to carry a bigger metaphorical club and brook no compromise. And yes, I have heard smart, progressive people that care about the environment and are sometimes vegetarians wish harm to people whose hero is deemed evil, and so they must be too. One thing that my research has pointed out is that there is a component of hero worship that is influenced by nostalgia. Sometimes nostalgia for a romanticized past that may have actually never existed or existed for a few privileged few. This nostalgia tends to forget the bad parts of the past and glorify the good. In Hitler's Germany, his followers dressed in folk costumes to remember a glorious past, when in fact Germany in the past was many squabbling duchies and principalities with little world clout and with as much plague and warfare as the rest of Europe. Don't let me get started on Civil War reenactors. In the text I use for my introduction to film class, in the chapter that deals with determining a film's ideology, there is a chart that rather simplistically lists contrasting beliefs from the right and left. In dealing with the perception of time, the chart states that liberals tend to idealize the future and see it as hopeful and probably better than the present, and that conservatives tend to idealize the past and see it as superior to the present, and their hope for the future is grim. Perhaps this is the underlying belief that needs to be dealt with. A MAGA hat wearing relative of mine in Michigan may be dealing with a future where they and their children and grandchildren will have no, or they fear they will have no agency, and their only hope of prosperity and a world that they recognize and understand is a strong, charismatic leader that promises to stop the world from changing and dial it back to when it made sense and keep them from having to make their hero's journey in middle or old age. As I mentioned in my Lord of the Rings reflection, some of my personal heroes are here at SFUU. You may not have a stone statue erected in your honor, or have a poem or ballad written about you that you know of, but there are heroes among us, and I honor the good fight that you gently wage from day to day, and I'm proud to be a member of SFUU. So Please join us for the hymn, The Fire of Commitment, number 1020 in the blue hymnal, if you have that.
From the light of tasting heaven, moons are big and bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. With the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze. When our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. With the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze. When our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
It has been said that the offering is the gift of the free church. That is to say, everything this congregation is and has is only what we bring to it, our time, our talents, and our treasures. In person, this is embodied by the powerful ritual of literally passing the plate and chipping in. With our online services, however, we ask that you contribute to our collection after the service by going to our website or using text to give, as Stevie is showing you now on the screen. As part of our ethic of generosity, we also split our monthly collection with a local community organization aligned with our values. And this month, the Share the Plate recipient is the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet, which provides nutritious food to individuals and families in the Auburn area who do not have sufficient resources to purchase it for themselves. So thank you very much for your generosity to this congregation and to our wider community.
As we seem as a nation to be traveling on a path toward normalcy from the scary territory that was and still is the worldwide pandemic, it seems a good time to remember the ordinary and extraordinary heroes that helped us to survive in body and spirit. The frontline healthcare workers, the teachers, the people that helped to feed us, the entertainers who worked from closets and garages to provide distraction to troubled hearts, the people who guarded our free and fair elections, the firefighters who protected our homes and and the Capitol Police who protected our or our national capital, and many more. And as what looks to be a dangerous fire season approaches, we'll need again to put on our hero helmets to prepare for emergencies and to help folks who may need our assistance. If you will join me in our usual words, as we go forth, may we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Blessed be.